Hi there, John here from Microaces. I wanted to put a video together in response to the recent FliteTest review of our kits and try to address some of the issues they had during the review. Now, first off, I have to tell you, we are big fans of FliteTest. It's engaging, hilarious, and absolutely right for encouraging and attracting people into the hobby, as well as keeping us lifers informed too, so we have no axe to grind. And after watching the FliteTest Microaces review, there were many positive elements that Josh and Josh saw in our kits, but it has to be said we were also really disappointed that David had such a hard time flying them. Not disappointed in him, but disappointed for him, because we've spent a great deal of time and energy trying to ensure our kits, once they're built, fly as good as they look. So I wanted to put our side of the story out there, and also wanted to show you a brand new prototype we've come up with that was inspired by David's performance, but more of that later. So the biggest problem for David seemed to be the notorious tip stall. It completely spoiled his experience. Well, I'm going to confess now that I myself, head designer, chief cook and bottle washer at Microaces, am just learning to fly indoors. There aren't many large indoor venues in the UK. I personally have to travel 2 hours for my fix. Now I can fly these aircraft outdoors until the cows come home, and tip stalling certainly isn't a concern I have in this environment. However, with my first few flights indoors, I felt like I was back at junior flight school. I was forced into turns to avoid walls, had loads of other distracting aircraft buzzing around at the same time and flying at different speeds and heights, and whenever I tried to gain any sort of altitude, dirty grey overhead support beams are there threatening to knock me down. So what did I do? Well, I had to stop flying so fast for one thing. I reduced the throttle and really slowed down the pace just so my senses could catch up. Then bam, I'm into my first turn, overbank the aircraft because the wall's coming up faster than I realised, which results me in losing gobs of height too, because I haven't got enough airspeed to maintain sufficient lift on that bank angle I'm at. And as the ground is coming up, I panic and try to level out the wings to restore that vital lift, but of course overcompensate on the sticks and roll out the other way. The novice flyer instinct kicks in and I grab elevator to try and recover the whole situation, but it's all in vain, and I hit the deck, and I did that more times than I should have had to. But at no time did the aircraft really tip stall. I just wasn't flying with the finesse required for a low-wing fighter aircraft indoors. And I think this is possibly similar to what David experienced in the FliteTest review. Not a heavy tip stall prone aircraft that refused to stay in the air, but an aircraft he hadn't yet become familiar with in an environment that certainly wasn't conducive to a maiden flight. What I learned as I progressed with my indoor flying was that I needed to carefully maintain lift when turning my aircraft and concentrate more, much more than when I was flying outside. What I do now is simply add power and elevator in a banking turn to increase lift, or coordinate the rudder, ailerons and elevator to keep the wings almost level and skid or flat turn the aircraft. Now that's actually quite fun, and you can do it at much slower speeds. When you pull it off, a nice balanced skid turn when you're in full control feels great, and it's really rewarding. And hey, that is what Microaces kits are all about. Right from the build to the maiden flight, trimming, flying, you're being challenged all the time. Microaces kits are a challenge to build, a challenge to fly, but it makes for a really rewarding micro-scale experience. In fact, we've actually gone to great lengths in the development of our kits to try and replicate some of the characteristics of the full-size aircraft. Firstly, we've kept the aircraft profiles as exact as we can. That includes all of the flight and control surfaces, even details and shapes that many manufacturers of larger scale aircraft remove for ease of production, I guess. Secondly, we also research the flying habits of the actual aircraft too, to try and ensure we get that feel into the aircraft so you really experience a bit of what the aircraft is all about. Let's take the P-51 as an example. The real P-51, circa 1944, had a V12 Rolls-Royce design Merlin engine up front, much like the Spitfire. The Merlin is a big, long power plant and gives the P-51 its blistering performance, but when you roll a P-51, or Spitfire for that matter, that long nose and engine weight drag the aircraft downwards. You can actually lose a great deal of height if you don't get it right, and it has caught many a rookie pilot out back in the day. So when you roll a real Mustang, you have to feed in down elevator halfway through the roll to maintain altitude and keep the nose on the horizon. You have to do that with a Microaces P-51 too. And when you get it right, it looks right and it feels incredible. In essence, we haven't tried to tame the aircraft we model, but instead we've made the aircraft really strong, so you have the opportunity to learn to fly well, but don't have to worry if sometimes you don't get it right. Our philosophy on this also means each aircraft model we design feels and flies differently, as would flying different full-scale aircraft. So each new kit brings new rewards and new experiences that keeps flying microscale aircraft interesting. The other thing we've designed into the kits is swappable components. The motor, speed controller and receiver are all easily removable and compatible with other Microaces kits. And of course we offer our kits with or without motor and speed controller, so cost of ownership goes right down after your first kit. Coming back to the point of the strength of the aircraft, I'm sure you'll agree it was pretty clearly demonstrated in the FliteTest review that Microaces aircraft are built to take impacts that would possibly disintegrate most other microscale aircraft. And this strength is down to the material, the stickers basically, that are used to cover the aircraft. Now, Josh Bixler mentioned that these stickers are heavy. Well, he's right if you see them as just decoration, but they're in fact the most important structural material of the Microaces aircraft. They are the reason the aircraft are so incredibly strong, and in fact they are made of the lightest printable self-adhesive material we know, because we had it specially developed in the UK for this purpose. It has some awesome features. It's extremely strong, it's waterproof and both chemical and abrasion resistant. It's also aerated, which means it has tiny air cavities in the material to lighten it even more. All this, and even with the adhesive on the back of it, it's slightly lighter than cheap, thin photocopy paper. So Microaces kind of looks at the hobby of micro-scale aircraft from a slightly different angle, I guess. One that provides you with historically rich aircraft kits that are challenging but rewarding to build. The resulting aircraft have some realistic flight characteristics and an airframe strong enough to allow you to make mistakes as you learn the idiosyncrasies of that aircraft. I mentioned earlier that we had developed something in light of David's performance on the latest flight test review. We've actually come up with a prototype. It's pretty rough at the moment, but I think it's good enough to show you the concept that we're thinking of. And we really examined David's flying style, and we took into consideration his past flying experience, and also assessed his skill levels as best we could. And we fed it all into our big design computer, and here's what we came up with. It's the first Microaces quadcopter, and it's made of Mustangs and Focke-Wulfs, so we've actually aptly named it the Wolfstang Winterstoller in honour of David. It's gonna need a little bit of work before we actually get it airborne, if we ever do. But there we go. Chaps, thanks for watching, and FliteTest, a genuine thank you for your review. It's provided us with a lot of food for thought, and we really look forward to working with you again soon. Oh, and before we go, we now have a Facebook site up and running, laced with aviation history. Go check it out, like it, sign up for our newsletter if you like too. Cheerio for now.